think the existential crisis that you're going through is the loss of the previous activities and relationships in which you invested your sense of yourself. So the separate self, or the apparently separate self, cannot stand without identifying itself with something. If the separate self has nothing to associate it with, if it loses all its associations, it stands revealed as the infinite. The separate self is infinite being plus the content of experience, or identified with the content of experience, in this case, activities and relationships. So as you lose those activities and the relationships, the identity of the separate self feels this existential fear. It feels, if I lose much more, I'm going to die. But the separate self will die, because the separate self can only live by identifying with something. That's what the separate self is, the identification of our self, pure consciousness, with some kind of limitation, a thought, a feeling, an activity, a relationship. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be a spiritual teacher. Some separate selves derive the most substantial part of their separate identity from identifying with a spiritual teacher. Some people are so identified with Ramana Maharshi that they don't see that their identification with Ramana Maharshi is the larger part of their sense of their separate self. Ramana Maharshi is there precisely to undo that identification, and yet the separate self has invested itself so exclusively in a particular teacher or a particular teaching that the main part of that separate self is derived from that teacher. And that's just an example. It's not the case. But for you, the sense of being a separate self was identified with a company, an activity, a certain status in society, or whatever it was. And now all of those have been taken away from you. And you, the apparently separate self, are beginning to feel that if much more gets taken away from you, you will die. That's why it feels so existential. Your existence of a separate self is being threatened. And it's true. It is.
That's what I thought.
But it's good news, not bad news.
Does it feel this way at this moment?
It doesn't feel this way from the point of view of the separate self that you seem to be, but it is good news from the point of view of the self that you are, because when the separate self loses all its limitations, all the things that it's identified itself with, it stands revealed as the infinite. So that's good news. That's what you've always wanted all your life. All the activities you previously engaged in, you engaged in them for the sole purpose of knowing yourself again as this infinite I. And now life is cooperating. It may not feel like a cooperation. It may feel that life is taking precious activities and relationships away from you, but actually life is cooperating with your deeper desire to recognize your true nature. Not that it's necessary to lose everything in life before you recognize your true nature, but if we have this deep desire to do so and we don't cooperate with this desire, life has a way of imposing it on us. So just cooperate with the process. You're not going to lose anything of value. You're not going to lose your identity. You're not going to die. Just a sense of separation is going to go.
On some level, it feels right, actually. I have a feeling that I'm going through what I'm supposed to go through.
Yes, you said that this loss of your company at some deep level felt right. At some deep level, you recognize that even if you didn't formulate it to yourself in this way, you recognize that your identity was somehow invested in it. You couldn't quite let it go. So life took it away from you. And although it was challenging for you on an everyday basis, actually, it was a cooperation with what you wanted at a deeper level. It was removing a layer of limitation. And you feel freer as a result. Okay, there may be some fear. You don't quite yet know what to do in the future. But don't be too quick to replace the previous investment in an activity with with a new one. Just be confident. Stay in this limbo. Stay in this place that is free from association or identification, and go deeply into that, because that's what you really want. Don't worry, everything else will be added unto you. It'll come. But you don't have to, don't make it happen. Be confident to stay in this place where so many things that were previously of value to you have been taken away. Don't contract and think, oh, I must grab on to the next thing.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense.
You can't lose yourself. Everything can be taken away from you apart from yourself. Don't worry. You cannot die.